Alright, how's it going everybody? We're back here with the first of 3 installments of the videos that I promised yesterday. We're going to start off by talking more about what's in a first aid kit, how to put one together, and then the second video we're going to talk about how to use the items, and then thirdly we're going to talk about how to deploy these items in the field. Now for today's video I'll show you 2 types of first aid kit as well as different pouches or different bags you can use to put a first aid kit together. Keep in mind, you don't necessarily need a first aid bag to put a first aid kit together. Like I showed you guys yesterday, this is the Riker bag, a tool kit designed to carry tools. I'm using it as a first aid kit. And this here is a generic first aid bag from Dixie that I stocked and packed. This is what I would keep at home in my house. And I also have an individual first aid or IFAK kit that you would see, a military style kind of kit. And I also have here a pouch kind of a kit. This can strap onto a backpack or even throw this in your car. This can also work as a first aid kit, a bag for a kit. So yesterday I talked about kits that are online. There are a lot of kits online. They're all overpriced and most of them have things that I would never use in there. So what would a paramedic or what would I use with my background? So first of all, my background, I've had a background in law enforcement, EMS, and the first responder world in general. I was also in the fire service. Right now I teach primarily, and that's what I've been doing for a while. The bag that I have here today, like I said, the Riker bag. As you can see, the setup is pretty straightforward. Pockets are filled with stuff, and they're labeled. What you put in the pocket and how you preset it for deployment is very important because you don't want to have to dig through stuff to get things done. So right now we have on the top 2 packets of PPE or personal protective equipment. We've learned since the inception of the pandemic that personal protective equipment is very important because we can acquire illness from working on patients. So in my rippable, whatever you want to call it, the pouches I could take off of here, in them I have alcohol wipes, I have Clorox wipes, and I have some gloves in the back and a pair of masks. And over here, or 2 masks, not a pair. Over here I have another little vial or bottle of, well, it's not Purell in there, but it's a Purell bottle that I put alcohol in. And I have a bunch of gloves, and I have 2 ways of packing my gloves. I would either roll them by pair and put a little bit of a tape to hold them in place so that if I'm handing it to people it doesn't have to get all over the place. And I also have gloves that are folded, right? So those are 2 different ways, or 2 ways you can pack your gloves. So I have 2 packets of PPE. Now the best way or a better way of doing this would have been to put into each packet gloves, wipes, and mask. I'm just showing you a different configuration that I just threw together recently. Alright, so that's in the PPE packet, or pouch, or pocket. The next one I have that I opened yesterday is the Beacon, or bleeding control kit. The Beacon, or bleeding control kit, is more geared to stopping any major bleed. So if someone was working in their garden and they got a significant laceration on their leg or arm, I'd be able to stop it to some degree. If someone was working in their kitchen or cooking some dinner or something and they, cut a finger or, slice their hand open, I'd be able to handle it. If someone was at the park or kids are at the park and they fall down and they bruise their knee or they, cut their leg open or cut their arm open or get a gash in their stomach somewhere, I'd be able to handle it. If someone was, if people were fighting and someone got stabbed or shot, to some degree, I would be able to handle it. So that's what my Beacon or bleeding control packet or pouch or pocket is geared towards. So I'll open that real quick. So in here I have a tourniquet. This is a combat application tourniquet. This is used to stop bleeding on the arms and legs, on the limbs, right? This is basically a Velcro strap that's a loop, and then you have a securing mechanism and a windlass on the top there. I will do a video on this specifically and everything else in this kit on how to use them. Sharpie is very important because you want to be able to write down the time you put this on the patient because it's important. Another reason why a Sharpie is important, if I have multiple patients and I need to write down injuries of those patients, I want a permanent marker that I can write on the patient's chest or arms or forehead or somewhere to say, gunshot wound to the back, chest, leg, arm, wherever the injuries are. Even if I have a piece of paper, I can write it down on the piece of paper and put it in the patient's pocket or something so that I can keep track of who's injured and where they're injured. So this is like a very important tool to have. Next we have combat gauze. Combat gauze, vacuum sealed combat gauze, the Quick Clot brand. We're going to go more into how and why and when we can use this in the next video. Then we have the same type of gauze, Quick Clot combat gauze, but not vacuum sealed. Again, we're going to go into how, when, and why we use this in another video. Then we have Israeli bandages. This one is called Tactical Solutions Inc., or made by Tactical Solutions Inc. Basically, it's a pressure dressing, meaning that it's a bandage that I can use to apply pressure as I wrap it. So very important tool to have, especially if someone's on blood thinners. So let's say, you know, grandma or grandpa or mom or dad, they're on blood thinners and they were cleaning the gutters and they got their hands caught and cut on the gutter. I've seen somebody died from that injury before. That's why I was so specific with the description of it. This is a tool that could help to prevent death or prolong life until they can get to definitive care like a hospital. Next we have another type of Israeli bandage. This one is called the emergency bandage. Basically the same thing that I just showed you, but a smaller version of it. So if I was working on somebody's forearm, I would use this. If I was working on somebody's lower leg area or thigh area, probably this, but ideally a tourniquet if it was deep enough. So that's in my bleeding control kit. Keep in mind there are other types of superficial bleeding, and that's what I would control with my minor injury kit, right? I don't want too much things in the beacon kit. I want to be able to identify and grab things that I need. And these are the things that I would need immediately in the event that somebody was having a significant bleed. So let's open my minor kit now. So my minor kit, or the minor pouch in my kit, I have finger splints, because I've seen people break their fingers before, or even if the finger is not broken, they may have some minor degloving happening on a portion of the finger, and I want to secure it after bandaging it. Or they might have some a significant gash or laceration, or they may have an angular fracture just of the finger alone, and I want to secure it. These things are amazing, and you don't have to improvise. They're super cheap, super easy to get, and they're very good. They can also be used for a lot of other things, but we're not going to get into that. I have some wipes. So let's say the patient is dirty and I don't have access to water and I need to clean an area to see before I can apply any sort of dressing. I can use this. I can also use this to clean my own hand up or clean areas of the patient's body. So for example, if I had a cut right here and I bled all down my hand, I want to be able to see where the actual injury site is. I would first have to clean all the blood off. So if I can stop the side of the bleeding by putting a bandage and then clean everything else off with something like this, I'll be able to look for more injuries. So a sani wipe or a sani cloth is always good to have. And you want something that's meant to be used on someone's body, right? You can't just buy a regular disinfecting Clorox wipe and use that for someone's hand during bleeding. It's not the best practice. Continuing in my minor packet, I'd have these are second skin moist burn pads. So for small burns, this is really good to keep the area moist while transporting them to the hospital or getting them to primary care or urgent care or a doctor to further assess the injury. These are for small injuries, right? These are tiny little squares. So I wouldn't say that someone having this would probably need to go to the doctor, but it provides a lot of relief. If you've ever touched a hot pot or a pan before and you get a burn on your finger or on your hand anywhere, these things work really well. Next I have tweezers, primarily for splinters. I probably have more splinters in my hand, I've had splinters in my hand more than I want to know or remember, but these are very good. You don't want to have giant fingers picking at tiny splinters. You want to have something that you can actually use properly to pick something out of an injury. I also have here, before I get into this one, I also have here a little, this was a mint package. I can't remember if it was whatever kind of candy mint it was, but like a breath freshener mint or something. And I saw the packet and I was like, you know what, I could definitely reuse this. But in here I have some wound closure solution or skin glue. I have 3 vials of sting relief. So if you're stung by a bee or if you're stung by whatever animal, whatever insect, you're able to use that to help with the itching. I think it's lidocaine in there. And then I have ammonia inhalants. So This has been taken out of a lot of medical protocols pre-hospitally, but it's a really good tool. Somebody passes out because, you know, they can't see blood, or for some other rephobia they pass out. This helps to wake them up very quickly. And then I have my catch-all kind of packet here. In here I have skin glue, I have burn jelly, I have a bunch of other little tiny packet stuff. I have some hand moisturizer, I have some alcohol swabs, I have a bunch of band-aids, and I have this thing. It's called bloodstop. So I got a cut recently on my finger with a razor. I use a box cutter, and I was cutting something, and I ended up gashing my finger pretty good. And because the razor went in so deep, you know, it didn't want to stop bleeding. So something like bloodstop is a little square gauze infused with hemostatic agents, so it helps to control bleeding very quickly. This can also be used for nosebleeds and stuff like that. But remember, when you're putting something into someone's body, like their nose or ears, you want to have some amount of training. You just don't want to shove things up there, and then you end up in a worse position. So look into this if you're in the medical field, or if you're just somebody at home who's into, you know, preparedness, or you want to be able to stop bleeding if it occurs in your home. Look into that brand and that type of that tool right there. I also have a bunch of different sizes of band-aids, and I have koban. So if you don't know what koban is like cling wrap bandage. That's my best description of it. So if I am wrapping someone's injury or wound, putting a gauze down first and then trying to secure the gauze with bandage, I would have to tape it or tie it. With koban, it's self-adhering and it's stretchy, which means that I can apply some amount of pressure while also not having to worry about tying it off or gluing it down or taping it down. This works very well. It's like cling wrap for your injury, but it's breathable to a certain degree, so it's not water resistant. All right, and then I have, of course, more skin glue, a different brand of skin glue. This one is like super glue or gorilla glue for your skin. It works amazingly well. I'm not going to go into the brand. If you can see it, you can buy it, but I'm not going to talk about it. All right, and then I have some more of that koban that I showed you earlier. What I do is I take a little bit, I get a straw, I cut it, then wrap the koban around it so I can have it in smaller packets instead of one giant roll. Ideally, I only need this much to wrap either the forearm or the finger of a patient or a toe or something like that. And just having an entire roll, that could lead to some issues because that can end up, you know, contaminating an entire area, or contaminating, sorry, an entire roll of the product for just a tiny piece, this is a better option. In my trauma kit, or my trauma pouch, sorry, I have survival blanket, which can be used for various things. The biggest one for me is keeping somebody warm who is very cold, so a hypothermic patient. The shiny property of it is actually important because it helps to reflect heat and keep it in the area that you're trying to contain it. So if somebody is losing body heat rapidly, this can help to slow that down as well. Triangular bandage for broken arms and for a lot of other things. You can use this as a traction splint if used properly. You can use it as a sling, a swath, and you can use it even as a tourniquet if you improvise this and this together. You can have, or if you improvise and use these two things together, you can have something that is as equivalent but not as good to this. All right, so that will be in the tactics video. I also have a larger koban roll. So this is if I'm trying to apply pressure to a site of, well, not even pressure. So let's go back a little bit here. This here is, I'm going to talk about these together. This here is a moldable splint. So if I was splinting someone's arm, I could secure the splint with using koban, or this roll wrap right here. This would prevent having me to tie anything. Like if you look in the picture right here, they're showing you how to secure it by tying. I don't want to tie, I want to wrap the entire thing. So this helps to secure it. These three together can take care of pretty much any fracture, sprain, or damage to the arm, forearm, humerus, anywhere. So these three together can take care of pretty much any arm injuries, including bleeding to a certain degree with this. All right, and then in my other pouch or pocket, I have the medication area. So this is, again, kind of a catch-all for medication, and you're going to see some things repeated in here that was probably in my minor cuts and burns and bruises pouch. So the first thing is I have two rapid COVID tests. This is important, especially if I'm overnighting somewhere or if I am out and I'm traveling back home and I want to make sure that I'm not carrying the virus or it's not, it's not active in my body right now. I can go ahead and get this done. Also, if I'm working on a patient long-term in a remote setting, for example, we're out camping, we come upon somebody who's injured and we're trying to help them and we have to wait for an hour or two for an ambulance and have to continuously provide care, I can do this, and if the test is positive, I can inform the ambulance upon arrival, or I can take the necessary precautions to ensure I don't acquire it. So COVID tests. I just dropped a bunch of stuff. In here I have a bunch of ointments. So I have hydrocortisone. I have cortisone. I have some what do you call it, man? It's the equivalent to like petroleum jelly, but I don't want to use the brand name for these things because they're not paying me. But like if I have whatever, if I need to soften an area of my hand or the patient's hand, or if they have issues with dry lips, chapped lips, that's good. I have burn cream as well here, and I think that's it for that. Oh, and BioFreeze, kind of like Icy Hot, but in a small packet. I also have here some fever reducers because I have a toddler, and this bag literally is thrown anywhere I need it. So it's not something that I put too much planning into. It's kind of, I look at some situations that I was in the past, and I want to be able to be prepared for those situations. So if somebody has a kid that has a fever and I really don't want to give anybody's kids medications, this can help reduce the fever a little bit, keeping the patient somewhat stable until we can get further help. Liquid IV for dehydration. Remember, when you're dehydrated, you want to have electrolytes back into your body, not just fluid. So I have two types here. I have Gatorade, which I'm not a big fan of this, but I'll tell you why I have both. So liquid IV doesn't have a lot of sugar in it. Gatorade has a lot of sugar in it. So if someone is hypoglycemic and dehydrated, I'll give them Gatorade. If they're hypoglycemic by themselves and nothing else, I'll give them oral glucose. Low blood sugar, they need sugar. And let's say they're just dehydrated, and I did a blood sugar stick and it didn't say that they're hypoglycemic, then I'll just give them the liquid IV alone. This is way better in terms of its electrolyte content than Gatorade. But because of the sugar that's added in Gatorade, it has a specific purpose, and that's why I carry it. This, like I said earlier, is, I can actually talk about this brand because I'm a big fan of them. It's an oral glucose brand. I'm not going to go into it, but it's basically for somebody who is, somebody who has low blood sugar. But you have to know that they have low blood sugar in order to identify and give them this. I mean, you could make a good, educated guess that the patient is hypoglycemic, but I would always advise people to only help those that what you're doing to a certain degree. Like, you're not just throwing medications at it. And you might say, well, this is just glucose, I'm not throwing medication. But anytime you give someone something, whether it's giving them oxygen, giving them sugar, cleaning a cut, you are providing care. And to some degree, even though you're a good Samaritan, you're liable for whatever happens to them, if not criminally or legally in terms of the laws. You're gonna be liable civilly if they ever plan on suing you. So you definitely want to make sure that before you give someone something, think about it 2, 3, 4, 5 times before doing it. Iodine swabs. These are good for a lot of things, but the biggest one is cleaning cuts and bruises and burns. Well, cleaning cuts and bruises, not burns. All right. And then I have another little kit here that if, let's say that I can't take this giant pouch with me and I'm going somewhere and I have to leave this in my car, I would probably take this, throw it into my pocket, and continue where I'm going. It has antacids, so for upset stomach. This is good for a lot of things, but upset stomach, heartburn, and stuff like that. Also, allergic reactions, one of the other receptor sites we want to neutralize. Antacids are good for that. It has chewable, what is it called? The equivalent of chewable Pepto-Bismol. It has some acetaminophen tablets in here for headaches. It has some ibuprofen tablets in there. It also has a cough syrup packet in there. And it has another oral glucose packet. So that's it for this pouch, right? This pouch had a lot of things in it. So I'll pause the video. I'll put everything down, everything that was in there. I'll line it up here and show you how much stuff can actually be put into this pouch. All right, so this is everything that was in the pouch. It's very difficult to find a pre-made pouch with everything that you need in it. This is everything I would need, not probably not everything, but this is, you know, throwing together something in less than 24 hours just with what I have laying around. This is something that could address most major emergencies when you're, you know, waiting for an ambulance or when you're outside of a healthcare setting. In addition to what you see here, you should always have a cutting implement and something to see with when it's dark, because, you know, if you can't see and if you can't cut stuff open, you're not going to be able to help your patient much, especially if they have jeans on or if it's wintertime and they have like multiple layers of clothing on. You need to cut it off. This here is a Gerber cutting tool. This is called a strap cutter. This can cut pretty much anything. So, you know, and you don't have to actuate it like a scissors, or you don't have to worry about a pointy end like a knife. So this is a pretty safe tool to have to help cut off clothing if you need to do so. It's called a strap cutter because you can also cut straps with it, ropes with it, cords with it, anything you can cut with this, or most things you can cut with this. It also has a punch on the back of it, so if you want to break glass or break a window, that'll be very helpful as well. Seat belts as well. If you're rescuing someone from a car, this is a great seat belt cutter. And a flashlight, a very good flashlight. You don't want to have like a dollar store brand flashlight. This is something you don't want to skimp on. This can be used as a signaling device to signal help if an ambulance is on the way or if somebody's looking for you, signaling them. This can also be used as a self-defense weapon if you're trying to strike someone that's trying to hurt you. And then it can also be used as, you know, what it's meant to be used for, to see. You definitely want to have a good one of these. Invest at least $50 to $100 to buy a very good, solid, rechargeable flashlight. Since it's rechargeable, I don't have to worry about batteries. I do have redundancy built into this. I have flashlights in my car, in my other pouches, and everything else. So that's it. That's everything that you just saw in the kit there. And I will do a follow-up video on how to use all of these things. If you stuck through the entire 20-minute video, thanks for doing that, and good for you. If you're interested in learning how all these things work, continue viewing the videos, leaving me feedback, and I will get more into it. Thanks for watching, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Stay safe.